Hi there.
Hello.
Get rid of my cowlick. I'm actually frantically trying to wolf down some dinner. So this is my 5-minute meal.
Nice having the meeting start correctly.
Carrie, can you make me a co-host?
I think I made you host. Can you make me co-host?
Oh,
I forgot that when I make people host that I am no longer a co-host or host.
yes, I just did that.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary. Hey, Mary, can I rename you? I just want to get everybody as commissioners. There you go. Got your title. I'm not muted. Hey, Carrie.
Yes.
I'm just realizing I did not send out Zoom links to everybody, and there might be commissioners on the email wondering how to get onto the meeting. So could you
Okay.
keep an eye on that?
Yeah.
I mean, I hope everybody knows how to find. their way into the meeting, but
I'll just send a
sometimes people forget.
email.
Hi, Maria.
Hi.
Is that Anna? Misha?
Yes, yes.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
Just so Carrie for her minutes needs to know, so she's gonna record you as Anna Mancebo.
Okay, yes.
How do you spell the last name?
Mancebo.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Robin's here.
I sent out an email to everyone with the Zoom link.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Robin.
Hey, Miriam.
I just renamed you.
You renamed me?
I renamed you. I'm just putting every commissioner after everybody's name just because we had a big
Oh.
turnout last time and want to make sure people know who are the commissioners.
Got it.
Here comes Janice. And we got Scott. All right. And Beth. Hi, Scott. You're here or you're somewhere. I don't know where you are.
Oh, you're muted, Scott.
You can unmute.
There we go. I'm in West Virginia.
Nice. Well, same time zone. That's good.
It's almost heaven.
Depends on
Heaven,
where,
of course, we'll reserve heaven for Shutesbury.
depends on where you are in West Virginia.
That's very true.
Who your senator is. How you feel about that, Senator. All right. It is 7 o'clock. So we are actually starting on time, which is just delightful. And no Zoom problems. So that's awesome. So I'm calling the meeting. Let's go to minutes first. We need to approve the minutes for February 10th because I spaced out at the last meeting and did not get us to approve them. Has everybody had a chance to look them over?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any corrections or changes?
No.
No?
No.
Okay,
No.
great. All right, so does somebody want to make a motion to approve?
I make a motion to improve the March 10th meeting minutes.
Okay, second.
I second.
Okay, David.
Aye.
Is that an aye? And if you
Aye.
weren't at the meeting, I think everybody was at the meeting, but if you weren't at the meeting, you can't vote on it. You have to abstain.
Is this the February 10 or March
February
10?
10.
Okay, because
So
she
Mary
said
was actually absent. So Mary, you have to abstain. So Mary abstains. Defont, aye. Harrington,
aye.
Khan,
Hi.
and Beth.
Aye.
Wilson. Aye. Okay. And now we've got the March 10th minutes, which are enormously long.
But I read them all since I couldn't attend the meeting.
Great. I had some very minor changes after I had gone through. I just I'll send the draft, but I just corrected the spelling of some people's names where I could see that I knew who they were and could tell them their names weren't quite spelled right. And under Emily Stockman, I just added that she's a consultant, and I did the same thing for Janice and for Dawn, just so it's clear from the minutes that they were participating as consultants. And I think that was the only thing I saw. Let me look.
Everything's pretty complete.
Really painfully so. Okay. So that's all. I don't think I don't need to show you those little tweaks. Any other comments or changes? No. So I'll make a motion to approve as amended. Second.
Aye.
Okay, and this can only
Carrie.
be the three of us. So David,
Aye.
Miriam, Defont, I, Wilson.
Aye.
And Harrington and Con, you weren't there, so you have to abstain.
Right.
All right. Before we move on, there's one more remaining minutes issue, which is that we had that joint meeting in November with the select board, as many of you may remember. And we're being asked to approve their minutes as the minutes for our joint meeting. I don't know whether or not anybody feels they want to amend those minutes or add any additional comments. Scott,
Miriam, I had a question. I think you had suggested edits to those meeting minutes, and I don't think they were those ever accepted by the board and incorporated? I didn't think that they were.
I don't think I actually gave them edits. I wrote them a letter. I don't remember that I actually edited it.
I thought, well, you would know better than I thought you had provided edits to the meeting minutes to reflect some additional information or changes.
Okay, I can look. I don't remember that. I just remember suggesting it. Maybe we might want to do that because it did seem like there were some pieces that weren't in there that we have subsequently relied upon in our discussions, so that if somebody was looking at those minutes and then looked at our discussion, they might be a little confused by the disconnect. I'll tell you, I would, if we're going to do this, I'd like to propose that maybe another commissioner volunteer to do that.
I can,
Scott, do it?
yeah, I think I would want to confer with the rest of the commission because I can't remember right off. I think I would use your letter. I thought you had actually done a lot of the heavy lifting on that, Miriam, before. So I'm happy to take what's been done and draft something for the next meeting,
Sure.
right, for us to approve. And then is it too, I guess my question would just be timing for the select board. Have they already approved those same minutes? This was a joint meeting, right? Have they approved them already? And how does that work if we're approving a different version of meeting minutes for
I
the same
think-
meeting?
Yeah, we would. Oh, my internet is.
He can also listen, listen to the video call, right? To the voice recording of the meeting.
Yeah, there is
correct?
a video recording of the meeting, but you know, I think that maybe here's a suggestion. If individual commissioners want to look over the select board minutes and send corrections or omissions that they think should be added to Scott individually, don't send it to all of us. Scott can then collect those and try to put together maybe an addendum that would be attached to it. And that would be under our meeting we would attach it to those minutes. So it could just be, the following issues were discussed or comments were made or whatever it is you feel like needs to be added.
And what was it? Remind me the date of
I
that?
think it was November 17th. And it was,
Yes.
the minutes are on the select board website. I'll, maybe Carrie can forward them to everybody.
Which minutes? I'm sorry.
For November 17th, select board minutes
Okay.
was a joint meeting with the Conservation Commission. Okay, that'd be great, Scott. Thank you. All right, so before we have next thing I wanted to just briefly cover because we couldn't do it last week, last meeting, is that I have a project that I am going to be submitting an RDA to the Concom for my own home. And of course, I'm recused from that. And I am asking the commission to appoint an alternative chair to chair the public meeting for that RDA. Discuss.
I'm happy to volunteer, I guess, to be the chair for that particular application.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm fine
Miriam
with
had
that.
mentioned it to me before. I'm not, but whatever. I don't know how
Someone's got to make a motion.
yeah, for a
I
nomination.
can't chair the motion, so
I'll make a
Yes.
motion that we have Beth chair the public hearing for the RDA that will be submitted by Miriam for a septic upgrade.
I second.
I
just jump in there.
I
Aye.
Aye.
I guess I can't. Can I vote? I don't know.
all in favor.
Default recused.
All ayes.
Default abstains, I mean. Okay, thank you. I don't know when it's going to happen, but sometime this spring, summer, I'll submit that. Okay, we have a little bit more time. We have some site visits that we need to do. And I thought maybe we should talk about scheduling right now, while we have a little bit of time. We have a complaint that was just sent to us about stormwater issues on Lake Drive. And I forwarded that to the commission. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at that. You can take a look at it later. This issue has been brought up a number of times to the commission because there are some properties where that receive a lot of stormwater on Lake Drive. And there's a resident who is making a complaint and would like us to come out and do a site visit. And he emailed me asking if we could do it this Sunday. I think he would like us to see it during the spring period when there's more runoff issues. So question I have, we also have a certificate of compliance follow-up that's also on Lake Drive. And on Sand Hill Road, we've got a building permit for another geothermal energy system that's also in riverfront area. So it's very similar kind of situation, I suspect, to the other geothermal system that we just looked at. Do you guys want to do site visits on Sunday, or do you want to wait and do them maybe the following weekend and have a weekend off from site visits?
I don't think I can do, so this Saturday, are we gonna do the wetland
Well,
delineating?
yeah, I'm hoping we'll do that.
Okay, so
yes,
I can't do both days.
That's a
in
lot.
weekend, yeah.
I know. We can, we can't make any decisions until our next meeting, so we could just do all these site visits, not this weekend, but the following weekend, which is like April something. What is that? It's going to be April April 3rd.
Right.
Do you want to do that?
Let me see.
That might be better. I mean, I could do Sunday, but only in the morning. I would have to be home by 11.
Yeah, I can't do before 11 because I've got. I can't
I can't do April 3rd.
do April 2nd.
That whole weekend's a little booked up.
Okay, all right, not that weekend. We don't have to do a weekend. We could do an afternoon.
Mhm.
The only thing I would say is that because Lake Drive has been a contentious issue, and it has to do with property and also the road, I was thinking that perhaps we should invite a representative from the Lake Wyola Association, since they own the road. I feel like they should be there for the site visit as well. And that might take a little time to coordinate.
Okay.
You might want to also invite somebody from the LWAC,
Yep.
because
Wonder-
Dave Green and I forget who else just toured all these areas for stormwater
Okay,
for a project that they're working on.
Okay.
Um,
well, that
so
would
they
be
may have-
great. That would be great. It would be great to have LWAC involved. I mean, I think that the more the merrier, so that we're all having the same conversation. Sounds like it may be a little challenging to schedule. Beth, it'd be great to have you there, and Scott, because I don't think you guys have been a part of this. I know Robin has, and Mary, I think you've looked at this before.
I watched those videos.
You saw the
Yeah.
videos.
The that's a lot of erosion. That's
Yeah.
not-
Yeah,
okay.
it's a little, one of the things that's a little complicated is that number 66 Lake Drive has a storm drain. And that storm drain is where all the water is going from the road to the lake.
Mm.
And the landowners think that it was required by the Board of Health during the permitting of their septic upgrade. But we're unable, none of us have been able to find any documentation about that. The minutes and the permit don't say anything about it. I think we should look at that storm drain, and we should look at what's going on the road.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know I don't know. There was never a permit to the Concom for that storm drain. It was not part of the septic system approval by the Concom. So it's a little confusing.
So April timing's a little interesting, just to point out that the 10th is Palm Sunday and the 17th, which is the next Sunday, is Easter. So after the 3rd, the 10th and the 17th are Palm
Passover's-
Sunday and
Passover's
Easter.
Passover's in there too somewhere. Can't remember when. Well, perhaps what we need to do is just try to shoot for maybe like a Wednesday afternoon. That sometimes has worked. Beth, you can do Wednesday afternoons after 3:30. And
Yep.
actually, if we could even do a little later, Scott, when are you available? Like at a,
It really depends on the day. Which day, you're looking at the 30th?
I specific one, but I'll,
If you're looking at a Wednesday, I think you said, right? Wednesday afternoon?
send out an, for maybe a Wednesday afternoon.
Or you're
My
talking the
internet-
30th? You're talking March, we're talking April, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
probably it's gonna end up being April, I think.
Yeah,
If there were talking about this many people involved, you got to give people notice, so.
yeah. Are you looking at, I have time on the 6th. Or I could be there after, maybe I could leave work a little early if that worked better for folks.
The only other thing I'm also thinking about is that the landowner who sent the complaint, I don't think lives locally, so they were wanting a weekend because I think they don't live locally, but all right, let's move on, and we'll try to do this by email and figure out when the time is and invite some folks from LWAC and the Lake Whale Association too. That sounds good. And maybe push off doing the other site visits to maybe not this weekend, but the following weekend.
Okay.
Even if Beth can't make it. But or maybe we could do it on the Wednesday. Okay, well, to be continued. So we've got about 10 minutes. Do we have a little bit of follow-up about some of the site visits we did? We're going to talk about Wendell Road in a few minutes for the public meeting, so we'll postpone talking about that. Why don't we talk a little bit about 387 Locks Pond Road, the building permit, and what we think needs to happen with that. This is the addition where there was some changes to the runoff and a retaining wall.
Yeah, I felt like I feel like a notice of intent is needed for that project, just because of the stormwater they're putting in, what they're calling a dry well, and that's really close to the bank of the lake. And yeah, I feel like that's a notice of intent.
Everybody agreed?
Yeah, considering that that's the one that they want to put in the solid concrete also. Correct.
Yep.
Questions about, any more questions or discussion? No. Okay, I will communicate that to them. On the same topic about whether or not a notice of intent is involved, there's the geothermal project over on Cushman Road. Wells are often done by RDA. So I'm kind of, but it is in, the buffer zone, and it's sloping. It's on a hill just up from the wetlands.
It's quite an extensive project too, with a lot of digging that's going to be required as part of the project.
It's 2 wells. Yep,
And it's actually riverfront.
it's riverfront. Right.
Yeah.
Are you thinking an NOI, Beth?
Yeah, I think an NOI. They seem just also sort of capable to get a plan together, a good plan together, and put together an NOI just almost as easily as they would an RDA, because they've already had the wetlands delineated and must have gotten a plan from Ward showing the delineation. And,
Yep.
I feel like it just seems like something that wouldn't be, too demanding to get a nice NOI from them,
Yeah. Janice, Janice, you're there. Would you agree generally an NOI for 2 geothermal wells in riverfront?
Yeah, how close is it to the stream or any other wetlands? Do you know offhand?
It's close. It's
Well,
just
40
outside of
feet,
50
50 feet.
just outside of 50 feet,
Okay,
and it's uphill.
yeah, I would think so. And will there be trenching as well back to the house?
Yes.
Yeah,
Trenching. And so the
yes.
trenching will be about 50 feet.
Yeah, I think you should.
Okay.
So you can
All
put
right.
in conditions that stick, just in case.
And then there was 71 Leonard Road, the building permit that we saw, and there were resource areas, so sign off on that building permit. And then the only other issue, which wasn't a site visit, but I sent the photographs from 48 Lake Drive. Their order of conditions required them to send post-construction photos in lieu of a site visit. So just wanted everyone to confirm that they got the photos and we feel like they met that condition.
Yes.
Yep, it looked really good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now their project is done and they're going to be requesting a certificate of compliance. So we do have to do a site visit for the certificate of compliance. That's why we'll schedule it when we're out on Lake Drive. But they have to get the paperwork to us for that. So, and that it hasn't been submitted yet. So we will postpone that.
So this is just with the, I know with Lake Drive, we were talking about the 66 issue. Did you mention also doing 26?
They haven't we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
I don't have, that's to be determined because they haven't submitted a request to us yet. We'll talk about that later. It's on the agenda.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about the highway department site visit on Montague Road?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's see, I was there, Dawn was there, Mary was there, and Becky Torres showed up, but Tim Hunting from DPW didn't make it. He was supposed to be there. We waited for him. Something else must have just come up. So the four of us saw where the driveway had sort of been raised up at the end. You could see that, there used to be a large puddle there from drainage from the driveway, but also it's just like so many other spots on dirt roads in Shutesbury, it's the low point for both ends of the road. The north and south end are higher than that area, so it collects rainwater there. And so the owners of the house had been concerned about this big puddle at the end of their driveway. So DPW had come in and actually raised up probably the last 15 feet of the driveway. And then they'd also cut a little drainage channel from one side of the driveway to drain that puddle into what was a little wetland right next to the driveway there. Just up the road is one of their country drainage areas that's also pretty close to this wetland. So we looked at it, we just kind of talked about other ways that they could have maybe dealt with it. And then also just in general, that location of Montague Road, what to do with it in the future. We
Is
talked about,
Becky going to communicate that to Tim?
yeah, she was going to talk to him. I'm not sure if Tim would want to do another site visit with us. He may want to do that, yeah, she was going to talk to him about it.
I think I sent to the commission a site visit form that I did myself after we were at 585 Wendell Road. I looked at that area uphill from 585 where there's erosion into that stream. And I did send that on to the highway department and I have not received any response. Scott, you live near there. Would you be up for just taking a look and seeing if the repair work has been done or letting us know when it has been?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I don't believe anything had been done, but I'll take a look.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, I'm just trying to think if there's some other business that we can take care of. We got 5 more minutes. Just a reminder, I just wanted to say to folks, again, to be careful with all the public hearings that have been going on with the ANRADs, that, keeping track of your attendance so we don't end up having a quorum problem, like you Carver one, because that
We're losing you.
You're echoing a bit.
Uh-oh.
so
Miriam?
I'm getting upset. My internet is on. That sounds good. Put it in AirPods,
Oh,
having fewer devices. Okay, see if that helps. All right. So those are you guys one hearing, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You guys each missed one, right? Robin and Scott missed one public hearing from Montague Carver.
Yes, because I
Yes.
missed the last meeting.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it just means.
Do you
don't-
know when the next one's going to be? Because I'll just say right now, I am not going to be able to make the April 28 meeting.
I think it's been continued to May 12th. Maria's here.
Oh, okay, then I'm good.
So,
Then I'm
Awesome.
good.
okay, sounds good. All right. So that's good. And I'm gonna, at the end of the meeting tonight, we'll do a little bit of last minute planning for Saturday. So keep that in mind. I've got that on the agenda for us to talk about. And trying to think if there's anything else we can cover between now and 3 minutes. Is Wim here?
I am.
Oh, good, you're here. We got we got to wait 3 more minutes.
That's okay.
You
So
guys do
Miriam,
yeah,
looking at your list here, follow-ups to site visits, did we do the Wendell Road Highway Department one?
well, that's what I just brought up.
Oh, that I see. Yes, now that's down. Never
Yeah,
mind.
I'm sorry, that was, nobody else did
Why
it.
it's not checked off.
Just me documenting what I saw. So I think we've got that covered. All right. So I don't know. One of the things I guess we should be talking about is some discussion to follow up on Donna McNichol's recommendations that perhaps we get a consultant to assist with revising our regulations in light of defining a methodology for subsurface streams as a resource. And I've had a conversation with one consultant who's interested in possibly developing a proposal for us. And I sent everybody a link to his website, I think. And he has a hydrologist that he works with who's also interested in working jointly on this. They both have a lot of experience. This is Patrick Garner and Scott Horsley. They, just so you know, Patrick is a past president of MACC. And a very senior, very highly regarded wetland scientist with a lot of regulatory experience.
I guess my biggest concern with that is sort of precedent. You know, we're looking right now at these two other projects, the 64 Cushman and the other NOI on Locks Pond. And if that goes into our bylaw, all those homeowners are going to have to, in addition to hiring Ward Smith to delineate their properties, they're going to be having to hire a hydrologist or a geologist just to delineate. So I want everybody to sort of just think about what we're getting into, and then yeah, I mean that's basically.
Well, it depends on it. It'll depend on what we require, how we define it, whether that would be required or not.
Yeah, I just yep, that's absolutely right. But if we start, I guess, saying that it's required, say for the ANRADs that are being submitted right now as part of a delineation, then I can't imagine why with other NOIs, if we're asking for a delineation, why we would not have to require it.
Well, my thought about it, Beth, was that I don't want to get into the weeds right now because we have to open the RDA. So why don't we just postpone this and just put a thought on it? But just in short, my thought was that we could develop a regulation where there is maybe an acreage threshold and different requirements for small projects as opposed to large projects that are going to have a more cumulative impact. But anyway, so let's open the public meeting for the RDA for 585 Wendell Road. This is for a buried conduit. Hi, Wim.
Hi.
Wim Levine is the landowner. So Wim, would you like to just take a couple minutes, explain what you're going to do and how you're going to do it? And then maybe we'll ask you some questions and
Sure. So, since you were there last and we met, the phone poles have gone in. So
Wow.
that one at the property, they have not all gone in. There's still another, I believe, 4 to go, but that terminal one is in, next to Southbrook. So the trench for an electric conduit will go from that pole. Did you see, was it possible to see the spray paint I put on the ground?
It was.
So it will follow that route pretty much straight up the hill.
How
And
deep a trench and how wide?
it is, whoops, I gotta plug this in, 1 second.
We don't want to lose you.
Yeah. 1 second. Because we're gonna lose each other in about a second.
What Wim's not telling you is he has to trench a line to get electricity to his laptop.
I believe his computer just died.
We may have lost him. Didn't he
Oh.
say it was a narrow 2-foot wide, like a small excavator, is my recollection of what he had told us before.
Yeah.
Yeah, he may have to be he may have to get let in again.
Yeah, we can't talk without him. So let's just pause until he gets back in. Probably rebooting his computer. That's terrible.
All right, well, it's a good time for a question. So he said that all the poles were up except one on the south side. Is that a few on the south side or something?
Oh,
Near South Brook.
The South Brook, okay. I caught south, but I couldn't catch what it was.
I thought he said that, well, he can repeat it, but I thought it was the one by the Southbrook is up and the rest are not necessarily. I
Okay.
didn't think they were
Yeah,
in
the
yet.
terminal, the one nearest to South Brook.
that was pretty fast.
Do we know the status of the, like Viola, that, getting that done for like a timeline?
No, and I was wondering about that because they should have put in a request for a change of the construction schedule to us. So I can follow up with somebody. It'd be nice if we were kept in the loop about it.
I thought they'd probably do it at the same time. They're over here putting poles, that they'd probably do those poles at the same time, but apparently maybe not.
Well, that wasn't the only thing that was holding it up when they delayed it. It was, they had a supply chain problem with the concrete.
Oh,
And then they ran out of time with the season, I think.
right.
Yeah, I haven't seen any work for the poles, just some people out doing doing measurements.
Well, that's good. This is not good, though, that he's not signing back in. While we're waiting, for those of you who are members of the public who are here for other things on the agenda, it would be really helpful for our land use clerk if you can rename yourself so your full name is there for the minutes. Somebody else came in.
Is Emily here too?
She's coming at 8.
Okay.
Hi, it's Wim.
Oh, you're back. Thank you.
Hey,
I'm on a different, I got a new computer. Sorry about that.
Are you Polly Wagner?
Well, yeah, I have her computer.
Okay.
Um,
So when we, just a couple questions when we were at the site visit, we were wondering about is just what the dimensions of the trench were going to be and what kind of equipment you were going to use.
Yeah, so it's an excavator that's on a track, a Kubota, and the bucket is it's about 18 to 24 inches wide.
And how deep is the trench going to be?
Only as deep as the regulations allow, which I've gotten a couple different answers, but from the best I can decipher, it only has to be 18 inches, except under the driveway, it has to be deeper, but that's more than 100 feet from the stream. That's way out of the area of concern. So down by the phone pole, and I'll verify this, but 18 inches was the best answer I could get. And what I plan to do is have him mound the soil from the trench to the left of the trench, away from the stream. So that there would be no possibility of runoff into the stream, because the trench will be in between. You know do you understand what I mean?
Yes. Mhm.
Yep. And
Oh,
then,
it's not an open trench. It'll be a closed up trench, right?
no, it'll be open until the conduit with the wire goes in, and then it'll be backfilled.
Okay.
And so between the trench and South Brook, for those first 20 feet, I'll put hay bales. I'll stake hay bales just as a double safeguard.
And how close to the stream will those hay bales be at? Because we didn't measure that. We didn't know exactly where you were putting them.
So the stake for the pole, I haven't measured the actual distance of the pole from the stream, but when they staked it, and the stake is gone now, so I assume the pole is where the stake had. It was 19 feet.
So you're thinking that you'd put the hay bales, how much to the,
Probably
from the trench?
15 feet from the stream, 4 or 5 from the trench. I did notice next to the utility pole, there's a copper, it must be a grounding wire they drove into the ground, and it looks like there's also some sort of a guy wire anchor that they put in the ground.
What do you guys have any questions about this idea about the mounding soil? I am a little concerned about what's going to stabilize that, what's going to keep it from just washing down the hill.
Well, hopefully it's gonna all happen quickly. The trench will be dug. I will put the conduit in, the wire will go in. I have an electrician already who has been my intermediary with National Grid. And then it'll be backfilled.
No, I think you answered.
Or I think so it's going to be backfilled after, so you're mounding and then you're going to backfill. I thought you were going to leave it with the mound. It sounded like you were.
No. So hopefully it'll just be a matter of days, and it'll be buried.
And you're not taking any trees down?
No, no trees. There is one small white pine that may be in the way. It's like a 6-inch white pine.
Scott, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just clarifying. What I understood, Wim, is that the mounding, what you were just describing is you're in the short period of time before the wire is actually put in the trench, that you're mounting that on the side of the trench to try to prevent any possible erosion into the wetland. And then on top of that, you're also proposing the hay bales to further stabilize the site in that brief window where you have the trench dug,
Correct.
ready to receive the conduit. So I don't have any concerns.
Well, it's still going to be exposed soil on a slope for a while until it revegetates.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about like putting down straw to help stabilize the soil.
Yeah, on the steep part, I can do that. That's fine. I can take the straw from the hay bales once the trench is refilled and just spread that on it.
Is there any way that you can sort of coordinate having the trench dug and the conduit being put in within like a 48-hour period? To sort of coordinate with the, I mean, I guess I don't know who you're talking with and how that's gonna work.
Yeah, so it needs to have, I think it's Maurice Gregoire, the electrical inspector. He's gonna have to check it out. And he's pretty available. He's retired, so he can come on. My experience with him is he can come on pretty short notice. He came to the post and beam right away to do the electrical inspection there. So I don't think that's a problem. And I will, of course, it's in my interest to do it all as quickly as possible. So I will definitely do that.
Okay.
And I'm good.
I drafted some, Janice, go ahead.
So I just had one question about hay versus straw, and I was just concerned with using hay over the ground if it's going to be near the wetland at all, that you don't want to introduce potentially more invasive species.
Yeah, absolutely. I will use straw. I used
thanks.
those terms interchangeably, but you're absolutely right. I will use straw.
Do we want hay bales versus an erosion sock? Do people have a preference?
Straw bales?
I mean,
Straw
exactly, straw bales. Okay, sorry. Yes, straw bales versus a erosion sock.
I heard that it's getting hard to find straw bales and they're getting very expensive, like $12 or $15 each. I don't know if that's somehow part of COVID or what it is, but maybe give them the option if either one is okay. I think
All right.
either one will do the job. What do you, depending on you guys,
I have a source. Last year I paid 7.5, but so that would be amazing if it went up 100% since then, but I'll find out.
Yeah.
What I would like to do, because I want to get this determination issued tonight, is I have some draft conditions. For us to vote on after we close the public hearing, but I'd like to be able to have a discussion with you, Wim, while we finalize the wording. So I'm wondering if I could screen share those. Is that okay with everybody to do it this way? That seem all
Yes.
right? Okay, I'm gonna try and screen share it. See if, lost everybody. Hang on, let me try it. Screen share. And here we go. Okay, so I basically built this off of some other RDAs that we have done. Can you see it?
We can see it, Miriam. You may be frozen or you're hard to hear. You're breaking up.
Okay, internet is not behaving with me tonight. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
All right, so findings of fact, the applicant proposes to install a buried utility conduit from Wendell Road to the home. The conduit will be buried in a trench. Work permitting under this determination of applicability should conform to the following plans. A site map number 1 that was referenced on the RDA. Here's just the resource areas. The proposed work will occur within the 100-foot buffer zone to inland bank, as well as the 200-foot riverfront area of South Brook. These areas are regulated under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Shutesbury bylaw. And I just added a comment here just for clarification that although buried conduit in some instances could be a minor exempt activity, it is not under the Wetlands Protection Act because it's outside of the footprint of the driveway. Is that all right?
Mhm.
And then our findings are that the proposed project will have no negative impact with the following conditions. And so here's where we can play with them a little bit, and I'd like input. So based on what we just said, first 20 feet of soil disturbance would have erosion controls. Erosion controls no closer than 15 feet from the inland bank is what I'm thinking Wim said. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I'll go tomorrow and, but again, the stake was at 19 feet. If that's still the case, that's where the pole is, I have plenty of room to put the hay bales right along the straw bales, right along the trench.
Okay. And then erosion controls will consist of staked straw bales or erosion sock and straw to stabilize the trench until this is to cover the trench until it is stabilized. Does that sound all right, you guys? Or do you want different wording?
No, that's good.
Fine.
Okay. And then 5, here I wasn't really sure, if there was a delay and you had piles of material, whether or not we wanted anything done, if, you didn't get it, you're going to try and do it all at once. I think alternatively, we could say that we don't want any work done on a day when there's expected rain, which is a condition we've done before.
Right. I mean, once it's dug, we can't guarantee the weather, right? So
Right, because you're saying it's gonna be like a 2-day project.
again, that's my hope, but you know what it's like dealing with contractors. So,
Well, I'm not wedded to this. It just, it is a concern thinking about that you're gonna have this mounded material all the way up the slope. If you get a torrential rain, it could all end up in the brook.
So when you say tarped with a silt sock, you mean tarped with a silt sock around the base or something?
Yeah, that's what I
Okay,
meant.
right.
But I'm not wedded to this, and if it's, I think I was thinking more like it was gonna be a big pile as opposed to a long ribbon.
I think in this case, I'm less worried about it washing down into the brook, because what I understood William to say is that it's going to be piled. There will be the trench between the pile and the brook. Did I get that right, William?
yes. So I think it's a physical impossibility for
Okay,
anything to go in the brook. It would, if anything, and it's pure sand there with raw washed stone. But if anything did wash out, it would wash onto the road.
are you gonna have any erosion control down to on the road?
Well, my driveway is right there.
Okay.
So.
All right, so to just avoid having to do another site visit, I was going to suggest that we just have him submit photographs once the erosion controls are in place. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep,
Yep.
it's fine.
Erosion controls shall define the limit of work, which is a pretty standard thing we always do. No major changes made to a pre-existing grade. Is that all right?
Yep.
No trees. We could just say pre-existing vegetation be preserved to the maximum amount possible and take this out so that he can take a 6-inch pine out if he has to.
It's fine.
Is that fine?
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't sound like you're disposing of anything, so.
Nothing. No, it
Wow.
will all go back because the conduit is very small.
Okay. You'll maintain and repair erosion controls as needed until the work is completed. And keep erosion controls will be removed once the site is revegetated and stabilized, or just stabilized? What do you guys think?
Probably just stabilized because he's
Yeah.
not planting any seeds or anything, right? Just-
I
No,
think
there's-
the revegetation there consists of having the acorns fall on it.
exactly. It's a bunch of leaves.
Mhm.
It also depends on whether they're removing the stumps from the 3 trees at the bottom of the slope right by the brook. If they're removing the stumps, they should throw down some perennial rye or some sort of, roadside grass seed over in there, along with straw. But if they're not removing the stumps, then they're fine just the way they are.
I signed a consent form with them the other day for the removal of those 3 trees, but they did not specify in the form whether they were going to stump them or not.
You probably don't need them with a mini excavator. You'll be able to get right by that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to do it. I thought if they thought they needed to, that's on them, but I'm definitely not doing it.
All right, do we have enough to close the public meeting? Yes, okay.
Yes.
I have a motion to close the public meeting. I'll
Make a
move-
motion to close the public meeting.
Okay, second.
I second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
DeFont, I, Harrington,
Aye.
Han,
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, without much more ado, I'd like to make a motion that we issue a negative determination number 3 with conditions as amended. Do you have a
I'll
second?
Second, Mary.
Okay, David,
Aye.
DeFont, I, Harrington,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
No, Wim, do you want to pick this up or do you want this sent to you?
You could just send it. That's fine.
Okay, so I'll have our land use clerk send it out certified mail tomorrow, and I'll send you a digital copy.
Great. Thanks so much. And I'll get the photographs to you.
Great. All right. Wow, we
Thanks.
spent a half an hour. That was awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, you know what? I needed to ask the commission for permission to sign for them digitally. Do I have everyone's permission to sign digitally? And do you want to see the draft form? I did fill it out. Want me to screen share it?
I have my permission.
Yeah.
My
I feel like I've
permission.
already seen it and you have my.
Yeah, it was
No,
already-
the form, the actual wetland DEP
Yeah.
form. You're trusting me to have filled it out, which is very trusting.
Yes.
Okay,
Trust.
all right. All right, we got 5 minutes before the public hearing opens for the ANRAD. Is Maria here? Is Emily here now? Not yet.
Yes, she is.
Oh, that's her. I don't see her.
I am here. Hello, Miriam.
Oh,
Hello.
hi, you are. Hi. Is there anything else that we can do with 5 minutes of our time?
I have some really good dad jokes. Maybe not.
You know that I'm gonna bring up
Just-
that your egg addling permit is before you again for Lake Wyola. And that I recommend that you don't sign off on it, but there is no sign off on it, so good luck with that
We're
one.
not being asked to sign off.
Nope.
It's
Yeah,
just the
the
Board of
permit-
Health.
Yeah, the permit's already been approved by the LWAC.
Well, it's not LWAC, it's Division of Fish and Wildlife that approves it, but they're supposed to fly it
application-
before
the
the
application.
Concom for comment. Yeah, you're not gonna get a comment.
We don't have any jurisdiction over that issue, I don't believe.
Largest resource area in town.
No, I mean for egg addling. I don't think there's much for in the way of wetland impact with that use.
The
As long as
bigger
that's
issue
all
was
it
the
is.
shooting. It was the shooting that was the bigger issue. Because they were shooting geese near bald eagle nest. And they were shooting without telling anybody and not cleaning up the birds.
Yeah, I think they've addressed that.
Yeah. All right. Let me pull up we gotta wait a couple more minutes. One thing I probably should say to the public before we go into the public meeting is that the applicants have informed us that they are going to request closing the public hearing tonight. And I initially had been thinking that we would not be closing, we would be continuing. So we did not budget a long enough time probably for the public hearing tonight. So for people who are waiting for agenda items that were scheduled for after 8:30, I just want you to be aware that I'm assuming we may have an hour to this public hearing.
If I may, Miriam, and assuming that it works for Emily's schedule, I understand that you have other meetings that are starting at 8:30. So if you need to table this at 8:30 and then come back to it after the other meetings, we are willing to do that. Because I don't want to hold people up on the line either.
Well, thank you. I just, people are here. There's a number of members of the public here, and I don't want to put them in a position of having to wait around and to resume the public hearing. So I would prefer to, do the hearing as one continuous session until we're satisfied. Is that okay with everybody? In terms of our agenda? I think we can agree to that without opening the meeting yet.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we got one more minute. We got one more minute, and I'm going to make a couple comments or a few comments like I did last time, just for the benefit of the public who are here.
Do you want to ask people one more time to put their names on
Yes.
list their names?
I
Thank you.
will.
Yes, I was just
So
about to ask that.
Everybody, our land use clerk wants to do her due diligence to record everybody who came tonight. So we're asking people to just rename themselves. If you're on a phone and you can't rename yourself, if you want to at some point unmute and just say who you are, that'd be great. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. So I am going to open the public hearing for Pratt Corner West ANRAD. And before we begin, I'm just going to make a few comments. I want to welcome everybody who's come tonight to be a part of the public hearing. We encourage public participation and welcome you. And your voice is important, and we want to thank you for coming tonight. As I mentioned a little earlier, I'm expecting that this hearing is going to last about an hour. And the applicant has asked to close the public hearing tonight, which is their right. We cannot tell the applicant that they cannot close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, the commission will deliberate and decide whether and how to approve the ANRAD delineations with a issuance of what we call an order of resource area delineation, or an ORAD. My understanding from talking today to our third-party reviewer, Emily Stockman, is that she is going to draft a potential ORAD document for us with recommendations for the language for the ORAD. And that we would probably need to schedule another Concom meeting in order to approve that ORAD. Because it's not ready tonight. We haven't had chance to really read through it. We won't be able to approve the ORAD tonight if we're using Emily's language, which I would strongly encourage us to do. We can talk about that later. Just for people who are here, want to understand the process, we are here to collect information in the public hearing. The beginning of the public hearing, we'll hear from the applicant and we'll hear from our consultants, including our third-party reviewer, Emily Stockman, who is an independent reviewer who is working for the Concom at the expense of the applicant. I want to just explain that this is a resubmission of an already approved ANRAD that was approved back in January of 2021. We'll explain a little bit more later, but we discovered in the August of 2021 that we did not have a quorum of qualified commissioners voting on that ORAD. There were only 2 commissioners who actually could vote, who had been to all the public hearings. And you needed a quorum of 3 was what we learned in the summer from consulting with the Attorney General's office. So with that in mind, the applicant has agreed to resubmit the ANRAD, and we're having a new hearing tonight, but nothing has changed in terms of the delineations that were done and approved back in 2021. Just for public comment, we're going to have some discussion among the applicant and the commission and the third-party reviewer, Emily Stockman. And then we'll have a period for public comment. I'm going to ask people to raise their hand and wait until they have been recognized by me. And we're allowing 2 minutes per comment, that we would prefer if you can say it succinctly in under 2 minutes, that would be very helpful. If you are just basically wanting to support what somebody else said, rather than restating it, you can just say, hey, I agree with what he said or she said, and that has as much weight for us in terms of understanding the concerns of the public. I'm going to need somebody to keep time. Penny Jakes did it at the last public hearing, but she's not here tonight, I don't think. Is there a commissioner or somebody who's willing to do that? Need someone to do it.
I can do it.
Okay, Mary's going to do it, and you'll give a 30-second warning if people are, so they can wrap up.
We're doing the 3 minutes, right?
2 minutes, yeah.
2 minutes? Okay.
2 minutes. Just for a little bit of an explanation for people who are new and haven't been to meetings before about these ANRADs. An ANRAD stands for Abbreviated Notice of Resource Area Delineation, which is a lot of words, and we're just calling them ANRADs. It's a process that allows the landowner to determine the precise boundaries of wetlands and buffer zones on their property that are going to be regulated under both the Wetlands Protection Act and our town bylaw, Wetlands Protection Bylaw. The project site is mapped and the boundaries are then verified by our independent third-party reviewer who's working for us. The delineation is based on a field-based methodology that is defined by wetland science and the regulations that focus on wetland plant communities, hydric soils, and surface water hydrology to delineate the habitats, wetland habitats. And our role here is to properly interpret the laws and regulations and consider the scientific evidence about wetland habitat and hydrology. And the burden of proof, delineations. They've got, I just for a project to go forward, and the project that is, oh, can you hear me?
Miriam, you're cutting out for me.
I know. I am. The internet is giving me trouble here. What I'm just saying is that we do not have a project that we are approving tonight. There is no solar application before us. We are only looking at wetland delineations on the property for future projects, but there is no project we are approving or disapproving for any development at this point. With that in mind, let's move on. Maria, would you like to take what I'd like to do is we need to sort of recreate the content that has happened in previous hearings for the benefit of all the commissioners who are here tonight. So I'm wondering, Maria, if you would like to start with just giving us a summary of the project and what the timeline chronology has been.
Absolutely, thank you. I am just going to share my screen because I think that will be helpful.
Can you do that? Are you?
Yep.
Great.
Can you all see that now?
Yes.
Okay. So the ANRAD that's before everyone is a portion of a very large parcel. So this figure that I'm showing you right now, this black line here is the outline of the entire parcel. It's about 389 acres. And this red hatched area is the area that we reviewed as part of this ANRAD. It's approximately 40 acres out of a very large parcel. So with that, I'm going to flip to some other figures to show you what happened. Originally in October of 2019, we delineated this 40 acres and our map looked like this. So we have some streams and we have an isolated wetland and we have some other wetlands that are attached to these streams. That was before everything was reviewed. And something that was discussed during the process of this review is that while you can delineate resources at a variety of times during the year, that there are times of the year when it is much more difficult to do it because of the water level and leaves being on the trees and such. So this was not originally delineated at an ideal time of the year, but it was done to get the process going. So the original submission in December of 2019 included 4 wetlands and 7 streams. Now I'm going to show you how everything changed during the review. This one. So this is a map that was submitted to the commission back in October of 2021. It was something that had been requested just because there were so many changes to this site to make it easier for everyone to see what happened. So the streams mostly did not change. There were some minor adjustments, which you can see on here. Anything in red outline is the old boundary that was on the original plan. And then everything else in green and blue is what's there now that we changed based on the peer reviewers' edits and recommendations. So the site still has 7 streams. That largely didn't change. There was a little bit of change in where a couple of the channels were, but the streams are largely where they were. The major changes to this site are that instead of 4 wetlands, one of which was isolated, we now have 9 wetlands and none of them are isolated. So all of the wetlands that we have on the site are attached to streams, which is why they're not isolated. And in some instances, there were originally more than 1 wetland in an area, and the revised wetland is so much larger that it actually encompassed them and became one large wetland. So does anyone have any questions about that before I keep going?
Maria, can you point out, just for people who want to see, there's a there's a 200-foot riverfront area delineated here as well, right?
Yes, so this stream along the southeast edge of the study area and kind of along the southeast portion of the parcel is in part a perennial stream. It becomes a perennial stream where these two streams in the northeast corner meet. At that point, according to the stream stats documentation, the stream becomes large enough to qualify as a perennial stream under the Wetlands Protection Act. So we have a 200-foot riverfront area based off of that stream. All of the other streams that were delineated were determined to be intermittent.
All right. Would this be a good point for Emily to review her third-party review process?
I have just a couple more things to say, but then,
Sure.
yeah, I
Go
think
ahead.
that would be good. Something that I didn't cover while talking about this is that part of the peer review process is that even though this ANRAD was originally filed in December of 2019, that because of the time of year, it was an expectation that the peer review would take place during the spring, because that's a much easier time of year to delineate these areas. So that is what happened. The peer review site visits and adjustments took place during May and June of 2020, really as soon as the snow was gone and everyone was confident that the ground was unfrozen so that we could do this accurately. But otherwise, that's really, in a nutshell, the process that took place. So I think I agree with you, Miriam, that this is a great time for Emily to explain kind of what happened during the peer review.
Great.
Thank you for that introduction, Maria. For the record, Emily Stockman, peer reviewer for the commission. I was asked by the chair just to provide a brief summary and timeline of the peer review process, which took place for this ANRAD submittal. Maria has already touched on some of those points. And I would like to thank you also for bringing up the comparison document, because that gives us an opportunity to speak to a picture, which I think does a great job of illustrating the process. So as it was stated, the ANRAD was originally submitted in December of 2019. Because of the winter conditions, lack of observable necessary wetland indicators, as well as other boundary indicators, the site visit was postponed until the spring of 2020. The first site visit, those in attendance were Maria from TRC, as well as then Commissioner Liam Cregan. At that time, we inspected the approximate 40-acre study area, which was marked out in the field for us. It had been, the limits of the study area had been in part staked and in part were visible based on property lines and the roadway. During the initial site visit, as is illustrated by the map before you, there were unmapped BBW and bank boundaries that were observed, and a peer review comment letter was issued in April on the 22nd, I believe. Subsequent to the original site visit, TRC went out and did some additional flagging and prepared some revised site plans. The next site plan date was in May of 2020. Once we were in receipt of that, we scheduled a follow-up site visit. At that time, it was just Maria and myself. There were no commission members available for the second site visit, which was held in June, as Maria already mentioned. At that point, there were a few additional field adjustments that were made by TRC. And in November, we received site plan revisions reflecting those field adjustments. The November site plan was then reviewed by myself, and a second set of peer review comments was issued on December 3rd. In response to that peer review letter, as well as input from the Conservation Commission, a final site plan with a revision date of December 22nd, 2020 was issued by TRC. And that was the final revised plan that was ultimately approved under an ANRAD or ORAD that was issued on January 16th, 2021. So that's a little bit of the timeline as far as the number of site visits and various site plan revisions and comments that were issued through the peer review process. Does the commission have any specific questions for me?
Yeah, I have some questions, but I'm wondering maybe you could, well, I guess we can leave the site map up for now. Maria, Emily, do you feel, I was looking over your comments from the December 3rd review, and I guess one general question I have is, do you feel that the adjustments in the maps and the flagging that you were recommending in December 3rd have been substantially included in this map?
They were. The December 22nd revision reflected the comments of the December 3rd peer review letter. And that was discussed during the public hearing process while we were moving from review phase to the issuance of an ORAD and findings.
All right. You know, looking over those, for example, I noticed I think in the earlier one, there was a wetland area that you were recommending not be approved, or flags that not be approved. Has that been revised in this map?
Yeah, so if you go back to the original peer review letter of April, or even to the December 3rd peer review, those comments are all focused on site plan revisions that predate the final approved site plan. So they're not applicable to the December 22nd site plan, with the exception of those comments that opine on recommended findings or conditions.
And my recollection was that data forms were not submitted for the 6 new BBWs. Is that?
Yes. Correct? Yeah. So typically the BBW data forms are submitted with an original application to document and support the boundaries. As the process evolved, rather than just doing a paperwork review of data forms, we actually had boots on the ground and were able to look at the communities of vegetation, the soil profiles, as well as the hydrology. So the commission, it's my recollection, had ruled that the submittal of new data forms for these systems would not be necessary.
And I'm not remembering this discussion very clearly, but in your first review, you noticed that there was a culvert that looked relatively new, and you wondered whether the commission had approved a notice of intent for the culvert. And I don't recall whether that was responded to or not. Maria, did you ever provide information to the commission about that?
So I'm gonna back up very slightly just to add something that Emily said regarding additional forms. The other reason that additional forms were ruled as not necessary in this case is because all of the additional wetlands that were delineated were largely the same ecology as the wetlands that you already had forms for. So there weren't like significantly different things to document. With respect to the culvert, I believe that culvert that I had not remembered until you mentioned it, Miriam, is over here in the east. It is not on the property. It actually is under Pratt Corner Road. So the consensus at the time was that our understanding is that the applicant and landowner had nothing to do with putting it in, to our knowledge. Like we were completely uninvolved with that. So my understanding was that it was something that the commission could look through their records on to see if there had been one, and if not, then the commission could decide whether or not to try to issue an enforcement order for it. But I did not follow it past that. But
is that where you understood it to be, Emily?
My recollection, Miriam, is actually that I'm using the cursor, but I don't have control. It was actually westerly and close to the utility right of way.
Oh, do you mean over here?
Yeah, that smaller, it was a smaller culvert. And as was the case with other peer reviews, it was simply an observation that I made and brought to the attention to the commission, so that they could research whether or not there had been a previous filing, and if not, whether enforcement was necessary because of the observed activity.
My understanding is there was not a notice of intent, I don't believe, but we can look into that. We'll follow up and find more information about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately is something that I have no information about. It was like that on the site before we did any delineation, so it does predate our involvement in this.
Emily, I guess one more question I have for you, and then I'll maybe give it out to other people to ask questions, is, in light of the discussion that we've had in recent meetings about how the wetlands protection bylaw of the town covers and protects subsurface streams, which I understand were not delineated as part of this process. Do you have any thoughts about intermittent streams or subsurface flow areas that might be relevant on this project area?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Miriam. First and foremost, I should say that the boundary of subsurface flow has not been defined, nor has the methodology for determining the boundary. With that said, if I could direct your attention to sheet 10, I don't know if we just want to blow it up, Maria, if you wouldn't mind, or.
Sure, I can do it that way.
You may note that there's some curiosity to the blue line, the light blue line, indicating intermittent stream SGR2, and also its relationship to SGR1. And what we observed in the field was that this was an intermittent stream channel that had flow above the surface with a defined bank and a boundary that was identifiable, which was delineated and by TRC. And then as we move down gradient, the streams would cease over land flow, with the hypothesis that it was subsurface flow until it resurfaced further down gradient. And that's why you see these light blue lines that have gaps in them. And you might scratch your head and say, how does a stream start and then stop again? But what you're seeing depicted on the site plan here is where the stream is above the surface and has a defined bank. My impression of this property is that there is continuous flow. However, it does go subsurface in these areas. The same may also be true for SGR7, which you can see just to the right. Again, that might look a little suspicious, you know, or cause one to scratch their head. We have a stream that starts in the wetland, but then seems to just abruptly end in an upland area. Again, what you're seeing is the above surface flow with a definable bank. It is quite possible that there's subsurface flow that ultimately has a confluence with SGR6 further down gradient.
Mhm. Do other commissioners have other questions, comments?
I have a question. There was a comment about some vernal pools, and it looked like when you were just showing maybe map number 10, are those the vernal pools that you were commenting on?
Yes, Beth, if that is a question for me, if I may respond to the chair.
Yes.
Yes, those were the two westerly vernal pools outside of the defined project boundary, but within proximity to it. One
It
of them
looks like,
certified by the state, the other is mapped as a potential vernal pool.
and it looks like just because there's already 100-foot buffer from the wetland, that if there had been 100-foot buffer around those vernal pools, it's sort of encapsulated in the existing 100-foot buffer for the wetland.
Agreed.
Yeah, okay.
Are there more questions?
Not for me.
I know that there has been discussion in the past, and I'm observing, since members of the public wouldn't have access to this necessarily unless they went and looked at the review reports, but Emily Stockman notes in her report that study area is located as part of the public water supply watershed for Atkins Reservoir. And are there any other comments people want to make? Or is this a good time to open this up to public comment?
I don't have anything.
All right,
I'm fine.
Beth, did you have any comments?
I just want to confirm for the process of this, that Emily's looked at what's been resubmitted and basically hasn't seen any changes from sort of that final version of the ANRAD that had been, I guess, not really approved. Like an ORAD wasn't actually issued, was it?
It was actually issued.
It was issued in January of 2021. And then we
Okay.
found out.
So I guess, yeah, that's just the question, that Emily doesn't see any difference between what's being submitted now and the final that was submitted back then.
Beth, this is Emily speaking. To respond to your question, I did pull up the revised site plan dated December 22nd, 2020, that was approved under the original ORAD. And I compared that to the site plan also dated December 22nd, 2020, that was submitted with the resubmittal of the ANRAD. And I compared the 14 sheets, and I did not see any differences between the two sets.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I'm hearing some background music from somebody who's not muted. And if there's any background noise, since we have so many people in the meeting, people could just mute. And unless you have a comment, you can unmute, but I prefer to have people stay muted. Thanks. All right. I see Carlos Fontes has his hand raised, and he had emailed and asked if he could have 5 minutes because he is making comments on behalf of himself and some other residents. So with that in mind, Carlos, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and please indicate who you're also representing, and make sure you give us your full address as well. Anybody making comments, please make sure for our minutes that you identify your name and your street address and number. So go ahead.
Everybody, thank you for the time. My name is Carlos Fontes. I live on 359 Montague Road, and I represent the group Smart Solar Shutesbury. A lot of the questions that I had have already been addressed, but I would like to make a comment and then pick up on the last comment that Emily Stockman made about SGR 2 and 1 and 7. But first, my comment is that this NRAD is not only located inside the Amherst watershed, but is also located inside the Shutesbury's water supply protection overlay district, as it was defined in 2004 in the Shutesbury's master plan. And so this is really a highly sensitive hydrological area. And I think any ORAD that the commission rights should take that into consideration. The other reason that this is a problematic area is because it seems that any project would have to cross rivers and wetlands in order to get an access road. You know, if it was an access road from the east, it would have to cross hydrological sensitive areas. And so, so that's the comment I wanted to make. The other comment I wanted to make is that from what Emily said, it really seems that there is significant doubt about whether SGR2 and SGR7 are really intermittent bodies of water. In fact, there's some indication that they could be perennial bodies of water that go underground. And this is, maybe in another area that was less hydrologically sensitive, this could be a minor issue, but it's not here. I think here it is a major issue because there would need to be additional protection. So the issue, as I see it, is whether we are going to be just really technical here, or whether we are going to do everything that we can to really make sure that this hydrologically sensitive area is being protected. And this is not just an hydrologically sensitive area for the water in Shutesbury, is also for the water in Amherst that Shutesbury town said that they would commit to also protect. Those are my comments. The other one that I wanted to ask is whether we know for sure that the StreamStats application was really correctly applied in determining whether these streams are perennial or intermittent. Do we know? Did anybody check that these stats were actually accurately applied and used? And I don't know, but I would like to know whether somebody checked on this because it's really crucial. Thank you for your time. I have just one other ask. I have an ask to make, if I
30
may.
seconds.
My ask is that any ORAD include language about the extreme sensitive nature of the NRAD area, that all subsurface water be delineated, and third, that the connections between the hydrology inside the NRAD and the hydrology outside of the NRAD within the Amherst watershed and the water supply overlay district be fully identified.
Time is up.
Carlos. Thank you, Carlos.
I'm done.
Emily, I see you have your hand raised to respond. Do you want to, I also see other people have their hands raised. So do you want to
Miriam,
respond?
if it would be possible, I would like to just quickly respond to some of
Yeah.
Carlos's very articulate comments
I think
and
it
to
would
provide
help.
some clarification, but I will keep it brief.
Thank you.
I wanted to clarify that while I was speaking of those lower reaches of streams, 7, 2, and 1, I was not stating that it was my opinion that these were perennial streams. Rather, I was stating that it appears that subsurface intermittent flow may be associated with those channels. Also, if I may, through the chair, to respond to Carlos, the stream stats analysis was provided by TRC, and it was reviewed both in paper form and by independently performing the same stream stats analysis.
Thank you.
Those are excellent questions, by the way, Carlos.
Thank you. Okay. Next I see Sharon Weisenbaum.
Thank you, Miriam. I would like to make a request of the commission that I be able to share my screen and show an image. It won't take more than 2 minutes. Is that possible?
Do you want to, Carrie, do you want to make her a co-host? Maybe I can do it.
I'm trying, but it's not allowing me to.
I guess I can do it. I just did it. You're a
Okay,
co-host.
thank you.
And you can unraise your hand.
Okay, I just want to show, this is the area of the NRAD, and I just want to point out for the ORAD that there's a 200-foot drop within the site that leads directly into the Nurse Brook, which leads into the Dean Brook, which goes into, you can see the Atkins Reservoir over there in the lower left corner. And I also want to point out that there's a 460-foot drop from the site to Atkins Reservoir. So as much as we're looking at it on a flat map, I think we have to really take into account that this is up on a mountain and it's dropping very precipitously. So just keeping in mind when this is clear cut, what could happen in this watershed, and also that this is completely within the Shutesbury's water supply protection overlay district, as
30
Carlos said.
seconds.
Okay, so this is the protection overlay district, and also this is a picture of Atkins Reservoir, and this is the hill, to be clear cut, and just how close it is and how it can affect the Amherst drinking supply. So I'm just requesting that this be taken into account, the elevation, along with everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. I see Sanford Lewis. And again, please give your address. I don't know. Sharon, did you give your address?
I'm sorry, 712 Pratt Corner Road.
And Carlos, did you give yours?
I did.
Okay, okay, go ahead, Sanford.
Hi, it's Sanford Lewis and Jody Shapiro. We're at 50 Cushman Road. We are directly downstream from the site off the Nurse Brook. The stream runs through our property. And what I want to point out is that in the last couple of years, it's been very obvious that climate change is increasing the extremes of hydrogeological flow through the property. And when we've had a number of increasing numbers since we've lived here in 2004. We've seen a number of instances where it's white water that goes on for days and days. And after that happens, there is silt, unusual amounts of silt and sand depositing on the shores that we see on our stream that we haven't seen before. So I think the hydrogeology is changing with climate change. And in light of the recent experiences in Williamsburg and Conway with significant unanticipated water issues and erosion occurring downstream from solar installations, we urge you to consider these changing conditions that are probably affecting the site. Thank you.
And I'm seeing Charles Yergatian.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Just
Great.
identify your address.
Yep, 196 Montague Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, similar to the last meeting, I'm coming into this with a pretty much unbiased view, and I'm just kind of listening to what's going on. And I do sort of share some of the concerns raised by Carlos. Again, would like to sort of echo that, and also with what Sharon mentioned. It seems that there's just not enough evidence, and there needs to be further investigation. That's kind of how I'm seeing the situation from over here. So that's all I've got to say.
And Liz, thank you. Liz Sheffy.
Hi, I live at 213 Pratt Corner Road, below the existing solar installation, and have concerns about slope of this proposed one because the existing one has slope and there's a lot of runoff that I notice. I'm concerned about a slope analysis and storm water, heavy rains, and what happens to all that extra water as well. Where I live, the land behind where I live is all in conservation restriction, and I know quite intimately the water systems that run there, both intermittent, perennial. They change with climate change. There's a lot of shifting, and we just have a really wet area here, and they're all very connected, even if it's not right up against it. It's quite a system of veins. So I feel concerned about a real thorough investigation into what is done to that system of veins. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to mention, since you raised questions about slope analysis and stormwater, that those are not issues that are reviewed with an ANRAD. We are looking at the delineation in the field and on site maps for the wetland boundaries, but we're not approving any projects or evaluating any development impacts. Those would be evaluated at a later stage if the landowner or applicant develop a solar project to us.
We may be losing you, Miriam. You're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. At that stage, we would have an stormwater. Don, I see your hand raised. Don. wanna
Uh,
identify?
I just wanted to mention that the only section that talks about ANRAD within the Mass Association Conservation Commission's handbook specifically mentions that conservation commissions, under certain conditions, can reject an ANRAD, and one of those conditions has to do with slope. I don't know exactly the regulations, and I can't quote them to you. Emily probably knows them better than I do, but I believe it's greater than a 60-degree slope. And I can infer slope by looking at the topo lines on the map that I saw, but they weren't clearly demarcated, and I suspect there may be some areas where the slope is greater than 60 degrees. Not the entire project area, but certain sections of it perhaps are.
You did. Thank you, Don.
Wait,
Emily-
could you mention your address for the minutes, please?
I'm sorry, Don Walklook, 215 Leverett Road.
Thank you.
Emily, do you want to respond to that?
Certainly, Miriam. I am unaware of any section of the regulations that specifically addresses slope as it relates to an ANRAD and the approval or disapproval of a boundary. I cannot speak to a MACC handbook or guidance. I would be happy to review the guidance from MACC if Don would like to provide that, but I am unaware of anything in the regulations.
Janice, are you aware of anything that would relate to that? Just for the public's information, Don Walklock and Janice Stone are also informal consultants to the commission. So that's why I'm reaching out to them.
No, I'm not either having to do with ANRADs and ORADs. I'd have to look that up, but I don't remember ever reading or knowing anything about that.
I can't tell you the exact page number in the manual, and I have an old manual. You guys have the new electronic versions. You should be able to find it fairly easily. It's the only section on ANRADs.
My recollection was that the MACC handbook discussed the ANRAD being tied to, what is it, CMR 10.04 and 10.55, and is that where the delineation methodology is in the regulations?
This is Emily speaking in response to your question, Miriam. In relationship to wetlands, 10.04 is the section of the regulations that gives definition, and 10.55 is specific to bordering vegetated wetlands, how they're identified and what their boundaries are.
That's that's my recollection as well, that that's where it spells out kind of the three-part methodology of looking at plant communities, hydric soils, and surface hydrology to define wetland boundaries. Are there, I see Leslie Carrier has her hand raised. Leslie, would you like to identify yourself? And
Sure. I am at 58 Schoolhouse Road, Leslie Carrier, and I wanted to say that I agree with all the comments made by citizens of Shutesbury, and would like to just add that I have been living at my house since 1987. I have had 2 streams behind my house. One used to dry up. It's not drying up anymore. So I want to appeal to the Conservation Commission with climate change, as Sanford talked about, that we're getting extra rain, and that I now have 2 perennial streams where I used to just have 1. So, you know, I know that Emily spoke to the issue of the subsurface water. I wasn't really clear from her discussion whether that was taken into account, because if there's a gap and then the stream picks up, I'm noticing, at least on my property, it's just wetter than ever. So places that weren't as wet are now connecting. Whereas like I've been here over 30 years where there were times when it would dry up. So I'm just kind of raising the question, like, we have to think about the future, because right now on the map, it shows some gaps and lots of continuous streams, but is there a way to kind of understand that the water's running underneath the surface and to take that into consideration? Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Are there any other comments about that? Emily, did you want to respond? I'm seeing somebody's got a couple of people have their hands raised. I think Jill Buchanan and then Maria had her hand raised. So
I wanted to respond regarding
Sure.
perennial streams because it's come up a couple times, if I may.
Well, I'm noticing, I think Jill Buchanan had her hand raised first. I may be wrong about that. So could I just let her make a comment and then let's get to you.
Well, that's fine, because actually I did want to reiterate that same question. I was going to ask a similar question, which is, how do we make sure that
Wait, Jill, is that you speaking? Could you identify yourself and your address?
I'm so sorry. Yes, my name is Jill Buchanan. I live on 541 West Pelham Road in Shutesbury.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And so it did have a similar question about ensuring that we are addressing the full extent of, Shutesbury's bylaws to look at both surface water and, groundwater, and including whole systems approach to understanding the impact and what a wetlands, the full scope of a wetlands area, and just recognizing that, supporting what other people have said, and just reiterating that, we depend on this water for our health, our safety. This is just a hugely significant issue to all of us as residents and individuals and families and community members. So we really, I just want to say, I really hope that we can, pay attention to the full extent of our Shutesbury bylaws and make sure that that's addressed in our assessment of this ANRAD. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So Maria Furstenberg representing the applicant. And, if we want to have your other consultants or Emily chime in on this too, I realize that perennial stream has come up in several of these questions and comments. And I think that it has not yet been made clear that when we reference perennial with respect to a designation, perennial versus intermittent, on this type of delineation, there is a set of standards in CMR 10.58 about how to determine if a stream counts as perennial and has riverfront area associated with it. So in instances where you have a stream that used to dry up consistently and may not dry up consistently now, from a colloquial point of view, perennial is something that's ever flowing, but from a regulatory definition point of view, there are watershed size minimums that it has to have and flow rate minimums that it has to have in order to qualify if it is not mapped as perennial by USGS. If it's mapped as perennial by USGS, that kind of trumps everything else. So I just want to be clear that there is a difference in the kind of everyday use of the word perennial for a stream versus the regulatory definition of perennial under the Wetlands Protection Act. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we have more comments? Sharon, I see your hand raised. You've already made a comment, so I want to make sure other people have had an opportunity who haven't spoken before I go with another round of people making second comments. So Is there anybody here who hasn't said something that would like to say something? Okay, go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I only raised my hand because no one else was. Can I share my screen again? Can I ask the commission for that? I'm already a co-host, so it's easy.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, where is it? Sorry.
I may have withdrawn your co-host status.
No, I don't think you did, but I'm sorry, I can't find, well, I'll
There
do
you
my
go.
desktop. Okay. So I wonder if you can see this. Can you see that?
Starting, yep.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, I just want to put this project in context of some other projects. Like it's as if this is just one project, and I just want to kind of give an overview. Like this is the center of Shutesbury. That's Atkins Reservoir. Then there's Wheelock, 30-acre site. There's the Montague Carver 159-acre site. There's Leverett Road West site, 50 acres. There's Pratt Corner East. It's in that watershed overlay area, Pratt Corner East. There's Pratt Corner West.
30 seconds.
In the watershed, there's Pratt Corner South, and there's the Amherst site. And I just want to look at all this water flow, like going down, down, down into the watershed, and just look at this. This is like incredible. This what's being planned. And so I just want to say also, we don't want to take this particular site out of context of this fragmentation of a contiguous forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm seeing Carlos, you have your hand raised. Are there anybody else who has not had a chance to speak who would like to speak? I'm seeing Leslie Smith and Edward Rodonnet. And so Carlos, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to let some of these other people have a chance to talk. So Leslie Smith and Edward first, if you could just state your names and your address, please. I think you.
My name is Edward Rednay. I live at 180 Montague Road. And one thing I think that we need to consider here is that the debate about what a watershed is and what's reasonable use has to be tempered with the understanding that once there is a major pollution event or the type of event we've seen happen at other sites like this where the watershed basically got ruined, there's no going back. At that point, we don't have potable water, and we don't have our home values go considerably down because no one's going to want to buy or move into an area with a ruined watershed. And I think that the march to progress, what is considered progress, needs to be tempered with the understanding that there's no going back once something bad happens. And in light of what we've seen of corporate oversight of so many of these projects, things go wrong often. And I think that's very important for people to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you to the commission and the commissioners, and that I agree with my fellow Shutesburyans who have spoken prior. In particular, thank you, Sharon, for your maps and your articulateness, and Carlos. So thank you. I agree with what you said.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thomas Matsuda, if you could just give us your address.
Hi, Tom Matsuda, 93 Cahill Road, Leverett. I am a neighbors of you all, and thank you all for your thoughtfulness and concern and really looking into this issue. I want to agree with what everyone has said. My concern is the same of everyone's here. And it seems like at the last commission meeting, and this time there's all this concern about the underground water and the water system. And it seems like that's not actually being considered now at this point. And when will that be considered and how will that be considered? Because last time, no one really knew how to consider the underground water. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I'll try to respond to that briefly, if I may. Thomas, at the last public hearing for the Montague Carver ANRAD, and not everybody who's here tonight was at that meeting for their benefit, we had a discussion with our town council about some portions of our local town wetland protection bylaw, because it has a resource area that is not included in the state statutes. But it is in our local bylaw. However, our local bylaw doesn't help us define it. And we are going to need to study this and determine how we wish to regulate that resource area. How are we going to define it, and how are we going to protect it as a regulatory body? And that's a discussion we're going to have. We will have it. I think we're committed to it. My guess is that we are probably going to look for expert guidance, perhaps consultants. We will have a public hearing and draft and advertise draft regulations, which will be available to the public, and the public will have an opportunity to comment before we approve any new changes and regulations. So we're going to think about that and be careful about it, but it is going to happen. We'll figure it out. I hope that's helpful.
And will that be part of the consideration for this site?
Eventually, it would be a consideration for any future projects after we promulgate the regulation. So I think we want to do it sooner rather than later. We have to figure out how we want to define it, what we would expect of an applicant, what kind of documentation we would require of an applicant. So for any large scale industrial project, an applicant, if they're going to be working in or near wetlands or wetland buffer zones, they're going to have to apply for a permit to the commission. And then at that stage, we will have the authority to review that project and conduct investigations and have third-party review and gather information to determine what the impact might be and set conditions. That's the process. I'm seeing hands. I see Jenny and Renee Moss and Leslie. I guess, Jenny, do you want to go?
Yes, for the sake of time, I just want to echo the concerns that Sharon.
Jenny, could you just say where your address?
Sorry, Jenny Beeman, 113 West Pelham Road in Shutesbury. I just want to echo the concerns raised by Sharon. I think the map and the photo are very damning and just really show the tremendous impact that this would have. So thank you.
Thank you. Renee? And identify your address, please.
Yes. Hi, I'm Renee Moss, and I'm at 277 Shutesbury Road in Amherst. And I want to just thank all of you in Shutesbury who have dug so deep and done such important research, and Sharon for showing the whole picture. And you know, we may have some town lines, but they're sort of arbitrary in a sense, because we're talking about we're talking about a region. We're talking about what affects Amherst, what affects Pelham, what affects Shutesbury. And it's really in your hands in a lot of ways because of the incredible effect that Shutesbury will have on the watershed. And when we looked at that map that Sharon showed, we can see how the array that's proposed for Amherst is just a part of this one big contiguous forest. So I thank you, and I thank you all, and deeply appreciate the hard work you've put into it.
Thank you. Thank you. I know that Leslie and Carlos, you have your hands raised. I'm not ignoring you, but I want to give other people a chance to speak first. So I see Anna Trapani and then Jim Barron. Just state your name and your address before you start. Thank you. Anna Trapani.
Hi, thank you. This is Joe Trapani on
Okay.
Anna, my wife's account for Zoom. I have a question and a comment. I guess I'll start with my question, which is just, I was curious if someone could speak to how 692 Pratt Corner Road. I was curious if someone could speak to how or what evidence there is or how the evidence is looked at for the impact of something like a 40-acre area that's cleared on underground water that isn't quite known about yet or on current wetlands. So is there anything to suggest that when you clear cut that would have a large impact on either the vernal pools or other underground water sources? And then my comment is just, I don't know necessarily how many acres we have in roads in Shutesbury, but I do witness that with the recent significant rainstorms that we have, that they regularly wash out, especially along their sides. And so it just strikes me that if something is narrow and often tree covered as a road gets washed out so easily in the storms that we have, that large swaths of land without tree cover and without roots might really sustain damage during the, I guess, more than significant rainfalls that we have seemingly often. But thank you for everyone's work. Thank you.
I guess to answer your question, and I appreciate your concerns, and we also are concerned about water quality and water quantity and protecting the environment. But tonight we're really not going to be discussing or making any decisions about an impact from forest cutting or development, because that is not what the ANRAD is. And we don't have the authority to make decisions at this stage in the game about what can or can't be done for development. When there's a notice of intent, then we do have authority, and we certainly will do our due diligence and be thoughtful and welcome everybody's input at that stage in the process. Because that's really where those questions are going to be most relevant. Thank you. So Jim Barron. Unmute yourself and you're muted.
Jim Barron, 72 Baker Road, Shutesbury.
Thank you.
And I have a question and a comment. My question is, how is climate change factored into these decisions? Because I don't think that we know all the consequences of climate change. I heard today, for example, that mud will be increased due to climate change that I never heard before. And the comment is that I'm very concerned about the watershed. And I agree with the concern here expressed. And that's my comment. And that's my question.
Again, we also are concerned about climate change, but ANRADs are about a delineation process, and we're collecting information right now about the wetland delineation process. And obviously, in order to protect wetlands, we need to know where they are. And that's our goal tonight, is to make sure that we understand exactly where the wetlands are so that for future development, they can be protected. Okay, Carlos, I see you've had your hand raised for a long time. Why don't you go ahead, and then Leslie, and then I think we should, I'd like to circle back to the commission and see where we're at in terms of the hearing for tonight.
Thank you. And I'm hoping that I'm not abusing this time, but I just would like to very quickly respond to Mr. Trapani's question. And that is that there is a 3-year study that was just completed by the University of Massachusetts Lowell about the fact that forests do indeed trap mercury, and that they clear cutting a forest leads to a release of mercury into the environment and the water. So that's just what I would like to say, something that people might want to start looking at. The second thing that I would like to ask is whether the commission would consider commenting about the request that I made, or the ask is not really a request, but just asking you whether you would consider that in whatever determination you make, that you would include language about the extreme sensitive nature of the NRAD area, of the extreme sensitive hydrological nature, that you would include language requiring in that any subsequent stage, underground water would need to be fully delineated. And third, that both the hydrology inside
30
the
seconds.
NRAD and outside of the NRAD would be fully mapped, that those connections be fully mapped, because as we've seen here, this is not just about Shutesbury, there is a responsibility to the larger community here. So again, my question is whether the commission would consider pronouncing themselves about what I am asking.
Thank you, Carlos. I think that it is to answer, maybe I can, maybe other people want to respond, but I don't think that we can tell you definitively right now what we're going to put in the ORAD, because we have to deliberate and draft an ORAD and discuss as a commission what we want to put in it. So in the public hearing, we're not going to make decisions about that. I think it is safe to say, based on the advice we received from town council, that we do need to address in some way the issue of subsurface streams, because it's a protected resource under our town bylaw. We do need to mention it and discuss or handle it in some way in our ORAD findings. But the final wording is yet to be determined, because we haven't issued the ORAD. We haven't drafted it yet, and we're still in the public hearing. Leslie, did anybody else want to add any more, or did I cover that? I don't know. Other people from the commission, or if Emily wants to jump in on that. No, okay.
I thought you stated it very well.
Thank you. Leslie, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to again reiterate, like, all the comments after I spoke, I agree with as well. And I wanted to draw everyone's attention to what TCR's Maria said. Oh, well, the culvert, that's not our property, because I notice I have a culvert going from my property under my road, Schoolhouse Road, to my neighbor's road. To my neighbor's stream, which could, if trees uphill were taken down, it would flood the road. So who pays for the flooding of the road, or putting in new culverts, or fixing the roads when there are trees clear cut above the culvert? I just want to kind of raise that issue, because it does relate to the wetlands. When you're cutting in the wetlands, subsurface water or continuous streams, there's always an effect, as Sharon showed that beautiful map, going downhill. And even though Maria would like to say, well, the culvert's not our deal, it's the town that's going to end up paying. Or again, as it did on Pratt Corner Road, when the road got ruined, who paid for that? So besides the environmental disaster, there's a financial expense when the road gets ruined and the culverts are overwhelmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, Miriam, if I may respond through the chair, I just wanted to clarify the discussion that took place regarding the culvert that Maria referenced which was to the east of the site and associated with SGR4. Once I've spoken, I'd like to pause and provide Maria with an opportunity to supplement my commentary if needed. That conversation began based on a peer review comment that we had issued, that we had observed a fairly new culvert while we were doing the site inspection, and had inquired of the Conservation Commission whether that had been permitted or if perhaps there was a violation present. I believe that Maria was referring to the culvert that is under Pratt Corner Road, and discharges flow into the subject parcel that is identified as SGR4. Again, as I articulated previously, the culvert that I had been referencing was further to the west. And the discussion regarding the culvert was whether or not this is an enforceable activity that the commission wants to further review. So that discussion was centered around an existing impact that was observed. And it's my understanding that the commission will be considering that further outside of the ANRAD.
Thank you. Yes, I think we'll have that discussion at some point when we're outside of the public hearing. It is 9:18, and I guess I would like to have a discussion about, you know, how much longer we want to continue, whether the commission feels it has enough information now for us to close the public hearing.
I feel like I have enough information at this point to close the public hearing. We've heard from a lot of folks tonight. We've got a lot of information from Emily. I think we'll consider all of it, that's for sure. But I think I have enough information.
Okay. Emily, I just saw you raise your hand. Do you have enough information, Emily? Well, Maria was gonna comment too. I'm sorry.
I think Maria had her hand up before me, and then I'll chime in.
Okay, go ahead, Maria.
I was going to share a figure with an aerial background to shed some more light on the area that Emily was talking about with respect to the culverts, but I also at some point wanted an opportunity to just kind of circle up with the commission about, there have been requests to include notes and things in the ORAD, and that's very similar to what was originally done. There are notes in the original ORAD that, for example, land under water bodies and waterways was not delineated or reviewed. So we have no issue with those sorts of findings being included because they are just documenting what was reviewed versus what wasn't, so that it's clear if a future application comes along for this area, what's been reviewed and what hasn't, because you should absolutely be reviewing what's subject to the bylaw when you've got everything defined. So we don't have any issues with that sort of thing being included.
And I'm quite confident that we will include some sort of language about that we are not reviewing any subsurface streams as part of this ANRAD. And what that means for folks, it doesn't mean we're saying there aren't any subsurface streams. It means we're not approving the boundaries of any subsurface streams, which means the applicant, those streams, if they exist, are protected and would be protected at the stage that a notice of intent would be reviewed. Go ahead, Emily. You still have your hand raised?
Thank you for that, Maria, and thank you, Miriam, for acknowledging my hand. I just wanted to, for the benefit of the commission and all those in attendance tonight, to reiterate that once the public hearing is closed, there can be no further input from the public or from the applicant. Once the public hearing is closed, the commission will move to deliberation stage, either this evening or at another scheduled time, at which point they, as the issuing authority, will have an opportunity to review draft ORAD forms as well as draft findings. I also wanted to state, for the benefit of all those in attendance this evening, in the past, when I have been retained to provide those draft materials to the commission, they have requested that they have them at least a week ahead of time, as you would expect, so that they can give them thoughtful consideration and deliberation. Because of the tight timeline and the fact that I only had formal authorization to proceed earlier today, the draft materials were not submitted to the commission a week ahead of today. However, Miriam, I was able to send those materials to the commission just prior to the public hearing. So I just want to confirm that you all received them. And I want to acknowledge, as Maria did, the comment about the sensitivity to the site and making sure that it's documented in the ANRAD. I can say that as with past ORADs, rather, excuse me, I misspoke, ORADs, it does discuss the boundary of land underwater and water bodies not being delineated approved. Based on input from town council, it discusses the boundaries of subsurface areas not being delineated or approved. As with past ORADs, it acknowledges the outstanding resource area, both the offsite but proximal potential and certified vernal pool. And it also acknowledges that Nurse Brook, the mapped perennial stream, has been designated as a cold water fishery. And much other aspects as well, but I wanted to just bring those specific ones to the attention of the commission as they had been referred to by others this evening.
Thank you. I haven't looked at them yet, but do your draft conditions also include the notation that the land is part of the watershed for Amherst drinking supply?
That is the outstanding resource water that is mapped by the state, and it is related to Atkins Reservoir.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So Maria, do you wanted to circle back with the commission? Is that my recollection?
Yeah, I wanted everyone to understand that we are fully expecting those types of things to be in the ORAD attachment. I mean, that has been the process to date to include things like that. And we think it's very appropriate for that to be in there. So we have confidence that you're going to include the appropriate pieces of information about, what else is at this site that was not part of the review process itself for this stage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to, I want to make sure I've heard from Mary and from Scott, and Robin, but I'm thinking maybe it's time for us to close this public hearing.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree as well.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody's thoughtful comments. We appreciate you coming tonight and being a part of this process and expressing your concerns. We share your concerns about wanting to protect the environment and water supply and water quality and habitat. hope that you feel like you've been listening. All right.
So we need a motion to close.
Actually,
You're breaking up again.
close. My internet is failing. Yeah. Emily and I discussed the idea that we would need to schedule, we should schedule another meeting to review the ORAD and to deliberate. And if we were to postpone this to our meeting on April 14th, we're on the 21st day of a 21-day deadline. And if anything came up, we would be in some difficulty. So,
Miriam, do we need to close the hearing first?
well, I
A
think
motion.
we do need to close it. Before we close it, I wanted to just mention this proposal. We have another meeting to do the deliberations, draft the ORAD, approve it, because, the ORAD's not ready tonight. We have to do the DEP paperwork. It's just not ready. I'm wondering about April 7th, 7 p.m. And the only agenda item would be this item.
Miriam,
That's okay with me.
this is Emily speaking. April 7th is the evening that I have a conflict, so.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, right. So we were thinking, actually, we were thinking of the 31st, right?
Yes.
Sorry, so March 31st. So it would be next Thursday.
That's all right with me.
Okay with me.
I think I may be out of town that evening. I'm not sure if I'll be on a plane then or not.
Oh, no. What about you, Robin? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted.
That's all right. So Scott's not available. Is there another day next week, we could do this? Scott, when are you out of town from? When to when? Oh.
Where'd he go?
I have no travels until June, and neither of them conflict with our June meetings.
Okay, good. Scott, are you there? Is he frozen or am I frozen? I don't know.
On my computer, he's frozen. You're not.
Okay, is he there? I think he might have just disappeared. Is he here? Did we lose him? I think we lost Scott.
Lost him.
Okay, well, all right. He'll come back to us, I think.
Is Emily available on another day?
Emily, yeah, what are your options?
At this time, I have no conflicting evening appointments that week.
I have a meeting on the 29th, I believe. Michael, is that right? I think it's the 29th. But otherwise, I'm free. Am I freezing?
Not now.
Okay, did you hear what I said?
Am I freezing?
I don't know. Okay, thank you. I don't know. This is my internet tonight has been very wonky. All right. We can pick this date later in this meeting. We don't have to keep the public hearing open. Here's Scott. Here he is. Scott, are you there? on Zoom.
No, yeah, I'm sorry, I got kicked out for some reason.
Scott, what are your travel dates next week?
I am gone. I think I'm gone Wednesday, Thursday, returning either Thursday night or Friday morning.
So Monday, oh, today's Thursday. There isn't enough time for me to post a meeting for the 28th. It has to be 48 hours or 2 business days. So it's Thursday night. Yeah, I can't do it we can't do Monday.
Tuesday work?
We could do it if we can do it before 7. I could do like a 5:30 meeting if assuming that, but a lot of times the select board meets at that same time and they have trouble with internet, with Zoom access, but what about the 4th, Monday, the 4th? Would Monday, the 4th work for everybody?
Works for me.
Works for me.
All right, let's do Monday, the 4th at 7 o'clock. Emily, you can do that?
Currently, it looks like I can do that.
Great. I don't think it'll be a meeting. Thank you. Okay. So I will move to close the public hearing for Pratt Corner West and RAD. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. David?
Aye.
Stefan, aye. Harrington?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
And Wilson?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. And let's move on to the rest of our agenda. Okay?
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Maria. Could you hold on one second, please? Okay, thank you. All right. The next thing I think on our agenda was the 26 Lake Drive order of conditions. And I believe the landowners are still here. Would you like to identify yourselves?
Hi, it's Anna Mancebo.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So I have shared the email communications that I've had with the commission. And tonight we can't really deliberate or make a decision about your request. I just wanted to update the commission and to have a discussion among the commissioners in case there was any questions about the process. And to make sure that you understand what the process is. But at this point, we need more information. We don't really have a formal proposal from you to amend your order of conditions. I know that you've asked in writing for us to amend the order of conditions, but as I explained in the email I sent you is we do need to have a proposal with a revised site plan and a narrative that explains the rationale and the justification for the requested changes for us to move forward with the next step in the process. Did you have any questions for us? Okay. I'm guessing you don't.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I apologize.
That's
I
all
had you on, I had you the opposite way. Did the commission get to see the letter that Dennis Clark shared with me while he was conducting his site visit? And then Charlie Kaniaki and Alan Weiss, our sanitation designer. Did you see those responses?
Yeah, we understand that the infiltration trench that was designed by your neighbors at 32 Lake Drive is not permitted by the Board of Health and a health agent because of the proximity to other septic systems and wells. However, that's not sufficient for us to alter an order of conditions. We still have to go through the process that I've outlined, that I shared with you. I gave you some documents with the instructions.
Right. I think although Dennis made the reference to 32 and that specific infiltration trench design, I think it was overarching that any form of infiltration trench is not going to work in our 80-foot sort of square footage, if you would. So I know you had suggested an alternate site. So, and I know there was some discussion about Lake Drive in totality as having major runoff issues, the length of the road. So I know this is a much bigger issue than my little plot of land there, but definitely want to do my part. So I'm wondering, you know, you had talked about a site visit. I mean, what specifically would you want to accomplish on the site visit so I can make sure that I have, is it some of what you've requested, you know, a site plan with some delineation, or can you kind of be a little bit more specific about what you want to accomplish and who I might want to have with me?
Absolutely. And other people can weigh in, but this is my understanding of the process, that to amend an order of conditions, there is a site plan that was approved. And there were conditions that were approved at the time of your notice of intent public hearing. So right now, that site plan is what is the prevailing requirement. However, your order of conditions did not identify a location for an infiltration trench or a stormwater feature. There's nothing that I know of in any Board of Health requirements that would preclude somebody from having, for example, a rain garden or a vegetated buffer zone to help
manage
stormwater. So clearly, you know, there are other alternatives, and but you need to propose those on a site plan for us, and it needs to be the whole site and what you're proposing, and then an explanation of how it's accomplishing what the overall goal was, which was to protect the lake from sediment runoff. So, you know, you might want to have a consultation with a wetlands person or a stormwater person. I'm not really sure who would be the right person to help you if you want to get some other specialist. That's really up to you. Even if, you know, you don't have to even hire somebody. We're not telling you have to do that. But what we need to do is we need to look at that and say, okay, are they basically accomplishing, in essence, what we wanted in the first place with an alternative method that has the same goal, the same level of protection? And the same thing, if you're saying you want to pave your driveway with asphalt, you know, some sort of impervious layer, you're going to have to show us how you're handling stormwater runoff so that you are protecting the lake and actually protecting the other nearby septic systems, because your parking area is actually quite close to your neighbor's leach field. So again, you know, you have to come up with a proposal. We have allowed people to pave driveways in the past, but with some conditions, and usually those were done under a permit. So in order to remove this requirement that it remain a pervious condition, a pervious layer on your septic system, you've got to be able to show us a proposal. So then we go out and do a site visit with that proposal in hand. And then we come back and we have a meeting where we make a decision. Is this a major change or is this a minor change? If what you're requesting is what we consider to be a minor change, meaning not really substantive, really accomplishing the same thing, then you're going to have a public hearing. You're going to have to notice all the 100-foot buffer, 100-foot abutters, and put a legal ad in the paper, just like you do
Okay.
notice of intent. And
Okay.
then we would have a public hearing. And then we would revise in that public hearing, we would review it and then, we would change your order of conditions. If we decided it was a major change, then we would go back to you and say, we can't change the order of conditions. You're going to have to submit a new notice of intent. So it's a multi-step process, and we just have to go through that process.
Now, can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So I have my sort of list of things to do. I will get on it.
Thank you. Great.
Okay. So I don't know what the timing is. I mean, is there a time frame here that no?
Well,
Okay.
one of the conditions of your order of conditions was that you were to come to us with a proposal for infiltration. So, or really stormwater, because, infiltration, that's what it is. This is basically allowing stormwater to soak into the ground before it hits a resource area. So, we need to review something. You've got to come up with a proposal. At the time of your notice of intent, the commission decided that some sort of stormwater feature was needed. We're leaving it up to you to decide what makes the most sense for your property and propose it to us. And then we would review it. And we can do that all in the context of this order, if that's what you want to do, if you want to request a change in your order, the order of conditions. We certainly want to work with you. We're not trying to be, unnecessarily difficult. And I appreciate your concerns and the situation you're in, and we do want to work with you.
Yeah, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Commissioners, anybody else want to weigh in on this? I'm tired, so I might be, it's late and my brain's not working so well, so.
No, I think you explained the process well enough.
Yep.
Thank
I would
you.
agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So we've got a couple of more items and we can wrap things up. So we had been talking a little bit about bylaw regulation revision and whether we should consider perhaps hiring a consultant to help us develop regulations for subsurface streams. And I think the points are well taken. I don't know if it was Emily or if it was Beth. It's all blurring. Emily and Beth are blurring in my mind as the wetlands people. But that, we may want to consider a regulation that, has thresholds that are different for different size projects, so that, somebody with their geothermal well doesn't have to do, a $5,000 whatever. I think that we would need to do that because we need to differentiate between scales of impact.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And I think as we get more information from a consultant as to sort of like delineation methods and things like that, we can figure that out as to what projects we think might require that. And yeah, I think it sounds good. The two people that you mentioned there, so are they a consulting team?
They're two independent consultants, but they work together. And Patrick Garner is, as I mentioned, and this is a hydrologist he works with. They seemed like a good choice for me. I have a lot of respect for Patrick Gardner. He's really knowledgeable and really knows the regulatory world, has done a lot of expert witness, would have very solid.
We're losing
regulations.
you.
Uh, you can hear me okay now? Oh, my
Yep, you're-
internet, it's been
you're-
terrible tonight.
You're
Okay,
back now.
Janice has her hand up.
yes, go ahead, Janice.
So I was just going to say, I know Patrick on and off for many years, and yes, I think he'd be excellent. I don't know Scott, but it sounds like it'd be a good team, and it's a good idea to do that. We got to get to the bottom of it, and there's going to be a lot of pressure to do so. My question is, do you have enough money in your notice of intent filing fee fund to cover this, or how is it going to get paid for?
I do have data on what's in the accounts, and I'm just thinking there's a couple of different accounts that we might be able to draw from. There's the bylaw account, and then there's the WPA account. I think it might come out to about $7,000. I don't know what's going to be required. I don't know if we could get any funding from the town to augment that, because I think it is a really important issue that we get right.
It may be something to talk to the select board now about funding for annual town meeting, a line item, because I'm thinking that as I mentioned it to you, I don't think you could use the notice of intent filing fees, because that's only for the Wetlands Protection Act. It's not for bylaws. So it would have to be whatever you have in your bylaw fees, which is probably not enough. So it may be something you want to talk to somebody about soon in town hall about it.
Absolutely. You're right, because there we have a chunk of money in the Wetlands Protection Act fund, but it's a much smaller amount in the bylaw fund.
Yeah.
Maybe when we redo these regulations, we should redo our fees. By the way, as kind of an update on this, I've started drafting maybe some proposals for revised regulations. I've been going through regulations from a number of other towns that have bylaws and looking at the kind of language they have in their regulations. And many towns have much more detailed regulations than we do, where they outline performance standards and really kind of flesh out kind of how they're going to evaluate projects. And I think that could be immensely useful for the commission, for the benefit of really just having some sort of uniformity in our approach to things.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Thank you for doing all that you do.
Yeah, really.
I will reach out. I wanted to say, while we're on the topic of all that I do, just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up. And I don't want to get into details. Some of you know my situation, but I do have a family member who is having some health problems. And, I would like to have a conversation about if I, for some reason, am unavailable, making sure that someone can step fluidly into my footsteps here and in my shoes to take over. And then I'm actually kind of wondering, Beth, if you're willing to be in that role. I know I'm tapping on you for a bunch of things, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely willing to, in an event of an emergency kind of thing, fill in. Yep, sure, absolutely. I don't think I would put as much into it as you're putting into it, but I'm absolutely happy to be a fill-in whenever you need that.
I know I'm going to be there's going to be a 10-day period in May where I'm going to be out of town while my family member's having surgery somewhere else. And so that's going to be a little complicated, but it doesn't seem to conflict with any of our meetings right now. But sometimes we have these last minute meetings, but I suppose there's internet in Boston, right? Scott, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the consultant for the subsurface issue and thinking about drafting regs. And I think all that is a really good idea, and I'm very supportive of that. My question was, wondering if we've done any relates to other town bylaws and if there could be some efficiencies. Are there any other towns that have a similar bylaw or a similar issue? So we would be the only town in the Commonwealth that actually would be regulating subsurface water in this way under a town bylaw.
Yes, I think that is safe to say. Did you hear me? Am I freezing? Is he freezing? I don't know who's freezing.
I got I'm seeing you shaking your head up and down, so I'm taking that as a yes. We are
Yes.
unique in the Commonwealth
We are
that
unique.
way. So
Yes.
this would be a product unique to just Shutesbury.
Yes.
And I'll just say, I'm sorry.
Love you though, Janice, but yes. And it seemed like, I had a conversation on the phone with Patrick Garner, and it seemed like he felt like there was a feasible way to do this, to look at intermittent streams where there's clearly subsurface flow, even as Emily was describing on this property, that there are some circumstances where it's clear that there is subsurface flow, and there may be a methodology for identifying that. But I'm gonna talk to the select board. I don't know if they have any discretionary funds that they might be able to. Do you think it has to be a line item at town meeting, Janice?
I don't know. I don't know what your budget is. Otherwise, can you get any kind of figure from Patrick? I'm guessing.
I hadn't gotten.
Yeah.
I
4,000 maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could easily be that if you're wanting people to do some research and really
attend meetings
and attend a public hearing and testify at a public hearing. Yep, and drafting documents. Yeah, it's not a small feat. Beth, you mentioned at the last meeting that the water committee in Amherst was looking into some policies with hydrogeologists. Is there anybody in that group that might be helpful to us?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few hydrogeologists that are on this committee, and I can get you their names. And they're consultants, so they work around this general area. And then that committee, so there's the Water Supply Protection Committee for Amherst. And we have formed a subcommittee that is going to look at basically the impacts of large scale solar on drinking water. And it's whatever we produce will be used partly by Amherst to produce a solar bylaw. That's what they want to do in the next year. But then it's also, I'm thinking of us, if we get actual applications for projects like that and we want an opinion from Amherst, that would be the letter again that we would use. And it's going to be looking at effect on water quality and water quantity of large scale solar in sort of general on drinking water, surface water sources and groundwater sources. So it's kind of in the same realm. It doesn't get into sort of subsurface streams and things like that. And as the same, what we're looking for like a delineation method and things like that. But there are some people that I could send you their names that might be interested in working on this with us.
All right. Well, that'd be great. Or if you want to talk to some people, absolutely.
Okay.
More the merrier. Not that we have the money for it, but I feel like we're facing some big challenges with this bylaw, and we really need to do it right. So I think we should work on it. Okay, so moving on, we've got, as far as I can see, one more item on the agenda, and I'm hoping this will be brief, but we had talked about doing this party on Saturday morning and going out and and Matt
We're losing you.
What am I
You're fading again.
here? This is my daughter's fault because she's streaming videos. Actually, I think part of the problem is that, you know what? Hang on a sec.
I was excited to hear about the party. I didn't know it was a party.
Me too, but now we can't hear anything.
I know.
So Saturday evening, I have a GPS device. Dawn has a GPS device. What I think would be like the simplest methodology is to go out with a notebook and a GPS, and one person kind of records a waypoint, and then somebody takes in a notebook notes about what that waypoint is and what the observations are, and then later build a map off of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that sounds a good. So we're not going to use the field maps, the ArcGIS.
I tried using field maps, and when I was like on some of the, like on Montague Road, it wasn't working. The map
No
just wouldn't work.
reception.
I thought it
Yeah.
just was not working. So that was unfortunate. And I thought maybe we should start off together and then split up, get together, do a few spots together as a group, and then maybe split into two groups and try to tackle a couple of different areas. So,
Sounds like a party.
how early do you want to start on Saturday?
I think you said 9 or 9:30, something like that.
Do you want it earlier?
No.
No.
Not particularly, but if you do, then I will do it.
9 sounds good.
I think 9. Yeah, 9 seems good.
Okay.
Let it warm up a little. Which road do you want to start with?
Montague is great. If you guys want to start here.
Is it open? Can we get down Montague?
Yes.
Yes, I just
Yes,
did the other
we
day.
can.
Robin, you want to say something?
No, I was just saying Montague is fine.
Okay. Well, why don't we meet, where should we meet? Why don't we meet sort of in front of the cemetery?
On Leverett Road?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of caravan down and cause accidents because we're going to block the road with too many vehicles.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's going to be, I don't know how we're going to do that, but
Maybe we could carpool.
maybe
from
we
there.
carpool. Maybe we, I'm okay with carpooling with windows open
Yeah, we
and
could.
masks on.
We could always go down. There are 2 parking areas for Brushy Mountain, so they could help depending on where we're going to be.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's rendezvous and show of hands. So it's me, Robin, Beth, Scott.
Could you clarify where exactly we're meeting again?
Cemetery, the town cemetery on Levitt Road.
Across from Montague Road, sort of.
It's very near.
Okay.
The one with the red barn or grave house or whatever it was called.
Okay.
The Hearst House.
Hearst House, that's right.
Mary, are you coming? Mary. Hello.
Me?
Yes, Mary.
Oh,
Yeah, they can.
No,
I
no,
don't know
no,
where
not
the
not
cemetery
Mary.
on Leverett is.
Mary David. Mary David.
I'm gonna try.
Okay.
I don't know where the house, I don't know where the cemetery on Leverett is though, so.
On Levitt Road? Do you know where the cemetery is in Shutesbury?
No.
Hmm.
Oh, I did. Oh, never mind. No, I know where the cemetery is in Shutesbury.
Just down from the town hall.
Down from the town hall, yes.
Yeah. And so we got Don. All right. And,
Good question.
Yeah.
I can walk to the cemetery from my house. Are one of you willing to let me in your car to go to?
You can hop in with me.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll wear my mask, I promise. And 95.
That's all I use. So Carrie, if you want to join us, certainly you're welcome to. We can't pay you for the time, but we invited you before. So if you want to join us, you're welcome to. It's kind of early in the morning to come.
I want to, but it's at 9 and like it's an hour drive. So
That's
I'm
right.
not like I want to, but it's really early.
Okay. That's all right. That's all right.
So the one suggestion I was gonna bring, like if I was gonna come, is that I don't know if you're doing pictures or not, if anyone has an iPhone, you can take really good like panorama pictures of like one spot if you go in a circle or like a half circle. And I just think that'd be really cool for like a map. If you want like big detail.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should take photographs of at the waypoints also because, in case the GPS is not all that accurate, we want to be able to have it clear enough so that there's a reference point, what we're talking about. So maybe you guys can think about how to do that. All right. Good. Is there anything left on our business for tonight? I think we pretty much did it all.
Just one question, Miriam, on the road mapping piece. I did see something that I think Paul Vlatch had shared on something I thought the town was using to map bad parts of roads too. And it got me thinking I don't know if I don't think it's going to do what we're doing, but I don't know.
That's PERCOG. It's the county government that's doing it. I hope that the highway department is looking at those maps, but that's really for road conditions. It's not necessarily for wetlands.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the work that we're going to be doing we're doing it for the highway department, right? They are aware of the resource issues that are there, presumably where the road is also bad is where they're maintaining it. So I didn't know if there's any benefit in trying to look at that system further, but it sounds like maybe you have it. It's
well,
not.
we could put a bunch of waypoints on that map, anonymous tips. That would be another way to do it.
Well, I was just I was just thinking it's nice to have like the road problems and the resource areas together ultimately for the highway department, but maybe that's something that they'll marry up at a later time or we can talk about later. Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So our next meeting is going to be on the 4th at 7 o'clock, but our regular meeting is April 14th, right? Second Thursday. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's 10:04. Somebody want to
boy.
make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second. I get to say that. I second that. Okay, David.
Aye.
Yvonne, aye. Harrington,
I
Wilson,
Aye.
and Con.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Night.